Total Chaos is a top to bottom remake of one of Doom 2's most popular mods. Yes, that is 1994's Doom 2. In 2018, Waterholic turned a pretty primitive video game into a more than solid survival horror. Owing I'm sure to how beloved this mod was and still is, they elected to give it the makeover it deserved, and from the outside looking in, it seems a resounding success. For those who played and loved the original, I'd imagine it's like returning to a game you played as a kid, only to find that time really wasn't kind to it. Except here, it's everything you remembered and more. Now, I'd never heard of Total Chaos before the remake, and I bought the game on its own merits. I'm a fan of survival horror. The first review I ever posted on this channel was a survival horror game, but I'm not a fan of this one. No, the title isn't clickbait. I did not finish this game. I gave it a fair shake, and for many reasons I'll get into shortly, it unfortunately overstayed its welcome. On learning a little bit more about the original mod, which is, if I'm not mistaken, quite a bit shorter and more focused, I have a sneaking suspicion I'd have enjoyed that one more.
It's not too late.
Since you're still here, I'm guessing you're looking for an explanation. If you're impatient, like me, and just want to know why I didn't persevere, I've included a timestamp just for you. But look, I gave the game a fair shake when I played it, and I aim to give it a fair shake in this review because I'm not an asshole, and I know just how much love was put into this thing, so I want to sing its praises a little. Total Chaos fits you readily into the boots of a coast guard with no regard for his own life, as he answers a distress signal completely alone. I'm not aware of how these things usually go, but surely you wouldn't send one guy out to save someone. Nor would you be happy if only one guy got sent out to save you, I'd imagine. Whatever the reason, he's in it now, because on the way, a violent and very supernatural storm damages his boat, enough to have him awaiting that one lone coast guard sent out to help him. Help doesn't arrive, and he awakes washed up on Fort Oasis, a derelict mining island, isolated and eerily quiet, bar some strange transmissions coming through his radio. He decides, of course, that the best course of action is to find the source of these transmissions and to delve deeper into this terrifying place. I very much appreciate the option to be an actual normal human being and immediately leave and go home, seeing that the storm has subsided. It's fun when games let you ask what if and actually find out. The setup is intriguing and really well done. I'm not in the business of spoilers, so if you're still interested after the video, you'll have to play the game for yourself. The atmosphere is great. Level dressing was a real highlight. The damp, dirt, and grime of an abandoned place is fully realized here. The game is lit in an unorthodox way. It's almost intentionally washed out, and it's only pitch black when there's no light at all. With all the big, bright industrial lights in the place, it made sense to me, and I ended up liking it. As a whole, the game is graphically dated, but in a way I appreciate, I guess. It's not hyper-realism. It feels like a game that would release in 2015, but with the visual jank of that time stripped away and polished. I've always been partial to this approach. At 11 or 12, I thought Assassin's Creed 3 was easier on the eye than Black Flag, at least on the platforms I played them on. I won't be delving too deep into a tween's take on graphical fidelity, but the point is made, and this game looks great. It performs well enough too, despite being dated in a few areas. What isn't dated is the animation work. I was consistently impressed by the attention to detail in the way you'd slot tapes into the cassette player or reach into your bag as you open your inventory. I was a big fan of the UI too. It gives me Stalker vibes and has that kind of minimalistic but not totally devoid of character look that I miss in newer titles. If you can't visualize the opposite of this, the game Visage or Visage has a UI style that kills me, man. Sound design is pretty visceral across the board. The ambience is layered on thick, and I had no issue pinpointing where most of the sounds were coming from. A good soundscape overall. I don't remember any of the music, however. I'm sure it wasn't bad because, well, I don't remember any of it. The theme is pretty great, though that's thanks to Silent Hill's own composer, Akira Yamaoka. The aforementioned is complemented by some pretty impressive voice work. It's not top of the line, mind you, but for a project like this, it's well beyond what I could have imagined. It's always tough to see when a story that's otherwise solid is taken down a peg by lackluster voice acting. I was impressed with all that I managed to find. Unfortunately, from what I experienced, the story is what takes the story down a peg. It's not bad per se, rather it's often far too passive and absent to be intriguing. That and it's fairly predictable. I had a look at where it went once I decided I wouldn't press on and found I'd clocked it from minute 1. Again, no spoilers, but the warning on launching the game was when I made the prediction. A predictable narrative doesn't have to be bad, don't get me wrong, and this one was never bad, but I'm not sure it was executed as well as it could have been. The original Total Chaos was only 6 chapters long, and I can see a tighter version of this story hooking me far stronger than this one, and lament that they felt the need to expand on something I hear was already so great. Mind you, the story isn't the only thing that felt this change. The gameplay is a smattering of pretty damn good ideas smashed together and stretched far too thin over something longer than it should have been. If I had just a sentence to describe the combat, I think I'd say it serves its purpose, nothing more and nothing less. Think a slightly modernized, condemned criminal origins, but the enemies aren't nearly as entertaining here as they were in that game. In fact, the enemies that played more like Condemned were a highlight for me. You have your basic attack, some weapons can heavy attack with 2 variations based on how long you choose to charge it. You can dodge and you can parry. It all works well enough, for sure, but I'm not certain the parry was implemented perfectly. It's high risk and pretty low reward. Most attacks aren't telegraphed well enough to risk the damage you'd avoid effortlessly by dodging or simply backing up a little. I found the rhythm a little too early, and besides the enemies using more conventional weaponry and a few unique encounters, I had the same approach to just about everyone. It's not the end of the world, but in a game overstaying its welcome, the combat encounters homogenizing becomes the cherry on top. I really would have liked it to feel weightier than it did. Impact animations left a lot to be desired, and I think it playing more like Dying Light and less like, if I'm hyperbolic, Minecraft, it would have been far less tedious. With hunger being more of a nuisance than an immersive survival element and combat encounters eating up your durability and health, the game fell into a routine for me shockingly fast. I'd wander around, every once in a while I'd find a note or get a radio transmission that only reinforced the prediction I made but didn't necessarily advance the narrative. A few monsters would jump me and I'd fight them the same way I fought most everything in the game. As a result, I'd get hungry and my stamina would suffer, my weapon's durability would suffer, and if I was unlucky, my health would too. And if I didn't already have what I needed to remedy that, I'd wander around looking for what I needed to remedy that. Rinse and repeat. The levels were homogeneous enough, as great as they looked, to blend into a bunch of hallways and dead ends, and even though I knew I was progressing, an unfortunate portion of this game was spent just going through the motions, if you know what I mean. To reiterate, none of this was bad. In fact, the majority of it was of more than serviceable quality. But as I said, a smattering of good ideas smashed together. It's like a group photo of the most interesting people in the world wearing the same clothes and making the same face. It's how it comes together. It felt really weird to be excited every time I discovered an admittedly really cool makeshift weapon to craft or a scary new enemy to fight, only to have them swallowed up by monotony. Because man, again, there's so much cool shit here, it's really a shame. Now I'm sure you're wondering why this was enough for me to drop a game for good. It doesn't seem like it was the worst thing in the world, and it's not an 80-hour game, even if it could have been shorter. Well, you'd be right, and it wasn't enough. Before beginning a new game, there's a cheeky little option available to you called Survivalist Mode. Now I think I'm cool, so of course I picked it. In short, it just makes resources scarcer and only allows you to save when using a finite resource, in this case records. I'm sure you've seen this stuff before, and I love it. And when it's balanced well, it is how survival horror should be played. But it was the nail in the coffin here, unfortunately. This game is not balanced enough or polished enough to have a difficulty that has you risking hour-long runbacks like this. Like every survival horror game, there are one-off sections that twist the genre into more traditional horror with unkillable monsters you have to hide from or escape, often involving quite a lot of trial and error. These are good sections in isolation, and I'm sure they'd be a highlight otherwise, but the problem with trial and error here is that this difficulty leaves no room for error. This is all fine and dandy when they make certain you have a save beforehand, but on multiple occasions I was forced to fuck around and find out when finding out had me repeating entire areas. The kicker was the final session. After around an hour of dealing with my harpoons and bullets bouncing off invisible walls, or enemies managing to hit me in unfair ways, through walls around corners or when they seemed to be out of range, this happened. I couldn't go anywhere else. The last save was over half an hour ago, and I'd scraped through some pretty difficult sections between then and now. Treebeard's fat ass was blocking the door, and trying to dodge past him killed me instantly. That was the last straw in a game I had really hoped to get through. I get that this difficulty is optional, but I shouldn't expect an unbalanced experience when tempted by a challenge. I mean, I guess it was a double-edged sword in the end, because I think the gameplay would have become even more monotonous had I not been threatened with a serious loss of progress all the time. At least I had to think a little to make sure I made it to the next save. Bar anything involving trial and error, it didn't end up being that grueling anyway. I seldom died to things I could avoid. I think had this game been more cautious with its implementation of such a punishing difficulty and had it elected to keep the structure of the original and not add seemingly unnecessary bloat, this might have been far more positive. Interestingly enough, I clocked in around 10 or so hours before I dipped out, which is a similar length to the original, I'm told. Despite all that I've said, this game is probably good enough to recommend to serious survival horror fans. It has some great bones, and if you adore the gameplay loop these games share, you'll probably enjoy this one. Just don't expect it to blow you away, and do not pick survivalist mode. Thanks!